Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers review for Monday, the 16th of September. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Chris Jack. How's it going, Chris?
Not too bad. A busy weekend, shall we say, Derek? A busy weekend.
Yeah, not half. Both on and off the pitch, plenty to discuss and get our teeth stuck into. So, I wonder where we shall start. We'll start with God, where do we start? We'll start with the off-field news, Chris. Late last night, it emerged that Dave King, speaking to your good self, has opened the door for a sensational Ibrox return. He's vowed to rebuild Rangers on and off the park within 2 years if he is to return as chairman. Now, of course, this follows the news at the start of the weekend. John Bennett stepping down from his position on Saturday due to health issues. And we wish John all the very best in his recovery, that's for sure. But he has stood down with immediate effect. And now that former director John Gilligan has been named as chairman on an interim basis, but Dave King is looking to return to the club. Now, speaking to the Rangers Review, says, I think I might be the best person to do it for 2 years. I don't want to do it for 4 or 5 years, but I know the club well enough, and I do think it's a 2-year job. I wouldn't be looking to invest more money in the club. I don't think that's the way forward for the club. I think, and I can't talk for the other guys, there's investor fatigue within the existing board members. So I think the way forward is, in fact, for us to attract additional investment. There is some interest in the club at the moment, but I think we've got to get away from the model where we just rely on supporters writing out cheques. There is money out there, but that money is not going to come from Rangers. We need to go and find other investors and bring them into the club. And I think that's what we plan for the next 2 years. I'd be willing to do it. Yes, I would. I understand what's involved. I'll come in, stabilise it, get the right people in place, get the club working properly, at least give it direction, give it a plan. But part of that will be for me to find new investors who will come in and make a significant investment in the club. He went on to say, I believe in chats that I've had, there's enough of an investor interest in those areas who are investing. And he said that Saudi, obviously, where Steven Gerrard is at the moment, there's a lot of interest in football there. There's a lot of interest in America, still where they see football and sports generally as being good. Rangers are a far more attractive opposition, far more attractive opportunity than, say, Sunderland or Brighton. And some other words that I'll say. You can read all this on the Rangers Review website, folks, but other interesting points he says, we're going to be in Europe, and with the right amount of money, we really should be able to march on and actually dominate in Scotland. We need people at this stage that understand the club, understand the operations, are willing to take it on. My thoughts have always been not to do it because I felt I'd done nothing and I'd done my crisis. Quite frankly, I didn't expect a crisis to happen again in my lifetime. So you can read everything he has to say over on the website. But Chris, Dave King wants to return. What do you make of this?
Quite a lot to unpack from events of the last 48, 72 hours. As you said at the top of the show, as myself and Josh have touched on, I think this is also our first morning briefing since the news about John Bennett. I'm sure everyone on the comments would pass on their best wishes to John and wish him well. I know he had some difficult moments as Rangers chairman, but I don't think you can doubt you can't doubt his passion for the club. You certainly can't doubt his financial input to the club as well. So I certainly wish him well and hope to see him back at Ibrox when he sees fit. In terms of moving that on, in terms of John Gilligan coming in, I'm sure we can talk a bit more about him as well. Really pleased to see John back at the club. When you need an interim chairman, when you need someone to come in and give you that stability, John is the perfect candidate for me. No one else on that board, I think, fits what Rangers need right now. John Gilligan certainly does. I say you cannot doubt his Rangers credentials, what he's done for the club, the part he played in regime change in 2015. So really pleased to see John back at the club. And then moving on to Dave, for me, he is the obvious choice. If it's not going to be a long-term position for John, I think Dave, as chairman, makes a lot of sense. He spoke there about it being a 2-year project, a 2-year job almost. Rangers need someone to come in and just provide that stability in a business sense, which then feeds in stability in a football sense. There have been too many changes at Rangers over the last couple of seasons. Those changes had to be made. That's not to say let's bring back the people who were there previously because they were doing such a great job. The changes had to be made. The board and the executive team and management team, obviously, and the football team, most importantly, had to evolve, had to change, had to try and improve. So that process had to be worked through. Now Rangers need a bit of stability, a bit of coherent thinking at all levels, a bit of proper planning, and I think Dave King would be a popular choice amongst many Rangers fans to come in and see that process through.
Interesting indeed. It's point about investors, Chris. I think it's hard to argue with that. Club reliant, as he's touched on, their supporters investing in the club at this moment in time. But I think it's important that they do look for money elsewhere to fund and put funds into the club. I think that is an important point to note there. And I think it was quite interesting. You were saying different markets and what have you. That mentioned Saudi Arabia, mentioned America, of course, as well. But that's certainly something I think that the directors and the board should be actively looking to seek funds.
I think there's two sides to what you want from a chairman and what you want from a chief exec. Is obviously the other main appointment that Rangers have to make right now. There's two sides to those appointments, and there's two sides to how you fund Rangers going forward. You either say that you cut your cloth and you only spend what you bring in. So if I think a lot of the work that John Bennett has done over the last year or so, he referenced that at the AGM last year, this 10.5 million loss. He said that had to go away. He has done a lot of good work to make that go away. Rangers are far more financially sustainable and operationally professional, if you like, that today than they were when he took over. That work had to be done, and if that proves to be John's legacy, I think it's quite a legacy to leave, because Rangers are in a more sound footing right now. So you can either say, well, we operate on that basis. No, we cut costs to an extent and we only spend what we've got. Or you say we budget for X, Y, and Z, and that can be topped up with external investment. Now, also during Dave's previous tenure as chairman, there had to be a lot of topping up being done, because also the finances just were not there. The club was in such a state, the business was in such a state when they came back in 2015. There's so much work had to be done. Funding had to be provided from outside sources. Dave put tens of millions of pounds in. John Bennett is in for over 20 million. Other guys, Douglas Park, for example, have put many millions of their personal fortunes in. So there's two sides to it. Now, do Rangers just operate on a break-even basis, one in, one out, in terms of pound coins almost, or do you budget for, I say, X, Y, and Z, and it's then topped up with external investment? That external investment is not going to come from Dave King. He's put his money in. His days of bankrolling Rangers, if you like, are done. I think a number of the other investors, they're probably deeper into Rangers than they would have ideally set out to be at the start of getting involved, through circumstances, change of managers, costs of certain projects rising and having to be funded. Eventually, everyone will have their break point where they say, actually, I've put quite enough in here. That's me done. I'm going to go and focus on my family. I'm going to go and focus on my other business interests. My days as a Rangers investor are over. At that stage, if the club still require external investment, they have to go to the market, I feel like. And Dave kind of rhymed off a couple of those markets in terms of America, in terms of the Far East, in terms of Saudi Arabia, for example. So it's a really interesting time for Rangers. It feels like barely a month goes by when you get a WhatsApp saying, "I'm hearing there's a Rangers takeover." I don't think we're at that stage yet. But if the club do need to go out and try and source more investment, don't be surprised if it does come from external sources rather than the current investor pool that Rangers have already.
Bluebells are blue says, one thing for sure, say what you will about Bennett, he's put the club in a far more sustainable place, a much easier sell when looking at new investors. Dave King also spoke about John Bennett as well. He says he's invested very, very heavily into the club, I think way beyond his original intentions. So I had a huge amount of empathy for what he was going through on a personal basis. I know it was affecting his health, and I understand that because the pressure is enormous, and it doesn't stay in your mind, it does translate to your body. That's just the reality of it. So I was constantly saying to John, just be careful because you're not well and you've got to look after your health and your family. The club is a club, so I think he's got it right, because I think it does get to a point where I think the current situation is really not fixable. So that's what he had to say. It goes in great detail about John Bennett. Again, I'll pop the link to that article in the video below, in the description below this video, folks, so you can have a read in your own time. So yeah, interesting times ahead off the field, Chris. Let's talk on the field. Because Rangers, it's always a good weekend when Rangers win, and they made life a little bit difficult for themselves yesterday. They were pretty comfortable, but started really well, scoring after a little over 6 minutes. Tom Lawrence with a delightful goal. They failed to build on that. Should have put the game to bed, in all honesty. But they ran out 1-0 victors over Dundee United. Some positives, there's no doubt about it. I like the introduction of Hamza Igaman again. He is impressing me, so much so I want to see him start against Dundee next time out. Of course, we've seen Nadim Barami as well coming on to make his Rangers debut as well. Oscar Cortez started for the first time in the world after his injury layoff. Kieran Dill started, which was a weird one. I don't think any of us seen that happening. I tell you what, I get pelters for my predicted team. The team I wanted Rangers to start with on Saturday. If I had put in the team that Clement started with, I can imagine the barrage of stick I would be getting over the weekend. But the team done the business. Chris, what did you make of it?
I thought they were worthy winners in the end. 1-0 looks tight. It perhaps was tight in stages, but I thought Rangers were well worthy of it overall. That first 20-25 minutes or so, if they had got a second one, it becomes a very comfortable afternoon for them. Fair play to Tom Lawrence for taking his goal as well. I spoke to Josh on the pre-match show, and Lawrence was obviously a talking point after the signing of Barami on deadline day. We spoke about him last week. We both had him in our predicted teams. I think the feeling amongst the fans was start him, give him an hour, let's see what he can do. Manager clearly thought different. And you have to say, when the guy that he then picks scores the winning goal, the manager can turn around and say, well, I told you so. I made that big point, and I made that big call correctly. So fair play to Clement for picking the team that ultimately won the game. Fair play to a number of the players. There was a number of decent performances in there. Lawrence should have had more goals, I think. Chances he had in the second half. Certainly the one after Igaman takes it down really well, plays that ball through to him. I think he probably should have done a bit better with that. But ultimately, Rangers managed to get through it. We know what can happen when it's 1-0 and you're going into the last 5-10 minutes of these games. How many times have Rangers fans seen that particular movie? It didn't come back to haunt Rangers on this occasion. I think the manager can be pleased with a good afternoon, because ultimately the most important thing was 3 points. They had to bounce back from the Old Firm defeat, but getting a win on the board and just giving fans and giving people a bit more enthusiasm and something to buy into. So very much a case of job done, game won, and on to the next one.
Yeah, John Suter was named man of the match. I mean, Rangers really troubled. I thought he was decent yesterday. And you just want to get the game put to bed, so you just sit back and you can enjoy it more than what you did at the time. A few interesting points coming in off the back of that. Kenny says there's no team dynamic and it's not a great watch at the moment. We don't create enough and always seem to be holding on. I think it's a fair point. And now the manager said afterwards, it is a new team. It will take time to gel. A lot of new players in there, Chris. I totally get what he's saying with regards to that. He did say, I think, was it that the manager, or was it John? I think it was the manager that said won't see the team at their best really until October. So it's still a work in progress, isn't it?
I think work in progress is quite an apt description for them. They are nowhere near complete. I still have my doubts whether the team is anywhere near capable of being Premiership challengers. Never mind champions. You look at the team, you look at the squad, and I think a number of people have the fear that Rangers are just going to be short in key moments and in key areas. When they lose, they get a lot of criticism. When they win, they still get criticism. That's perhaps unfair at times, but I think it's just where this team is. It's not quite clicking, even in the games that they have won. Ross County aside, when also they kind of converted that dominance into a really impressive win that afternoon. It's not been great overall so far this season for Rangers. We have to say that. I'm sure the manager would admit that himself. He does say the team are young, the players are young, the team is new, the players are new. It's an ongoing development programme. That's fine. He has said, as you outlined there, they will be better in October, November. Puts a wee bit of pressure on, because by the time you then get to the end of November, the fans are then rightly going to be expecting a higher level of performance, a more consistent level of performance, and a bit more in terms of scorelines in these wins. But I think there was positives, and it's like, I can remember talking to Josh after that Ross County game. I think, as we've said after almost every game that Rangers have won this season, just because they win doesn't mean to say that everything is rosy and everything's great and we go OTT in terms of the praise. I think you just have to take each 90 minutes on its merits, take the season as a collective on its merits, and see where Rangers are. Are they in a great place? No. Could they be in a better place? Yes. Will they be in a better place? That's obviously the most important question. Time will tell. You do have to give new players and a new team that opportunity, but that opportunity, when you're doing that at a club like Rangers, the need for performances and obviously results is just huge. You don't get that time, you don't get that patience, so they have to keep winning these games while those marginal gains are being found. So I say that's why Sunday was a case of job done. Then looking ahead to next weekend back at Ibrox, which will be great. You're expecting again a bit more from individuals and a bit more collectively. You're then looking at the European game and the Hibs game. You're then into this run in October, and by that stage, Rangers really should be picking up some momentum in terms of performances and results.
You'd like to think so. Brian M. with the point, Barron was superb yesterday. Best I've seen him. The Jefte and Cortez partnership looks promising also. I thought Jefte is really impressing for me at left back. He's working on his defensive game. It's weird to think the guy's only 20 years of age. He looks older for a start. I think the moustache doesn't help him with regards to that one. Good to see two players with moustaches in the team, incidentally. Hamza Igaman as well. Bring back the moustache, that's what I say. But Barron was brilliant yesterday. Chris, a few comments coming in saying the tackle on him should have been a red. I think probably... I know it's sparked a bit of debate. Do you think it should have been a red or not?
I think it's one of these marginal ones. I think that the height of the challenge probably just gets the United player away with it. If it had been any higher, I think you say it's definitely a red. I think it's probably on that line where you can say he's not going in too high, but you have to say he's gone in with a lot of force. He's gone in not to hurt Conor Barron, not to try and injure the player, but he's gone in recklessly. It's a strong challenge, and in the game today, we have seen instances like that where players have been sent off for them. So it's not one you can say it was a stonewaller either way. I can understand why people are saying it should be a red, and I think if you saw, we know over the next couple of weeks there will definitely be a situation like that comes up, and people will be referencing that one, saying, well, that was only a yellow. That this challenge here has to be a yellow. That's always the inconsistency and the frustration with these decisions. It was looked at, or the referee made his call, was looked at. I don't think it was a huge injustice, but I do understand why people feel that it could easily have been a red card. I say over the next couple of weeks, one will definitely come up that will spark this same debate.
Yeah, just on the topic of moustaches, World's Greatest DJ says Rangers should have retired the moustache after Souness. I'm trying to think of any other players after Souness that had a moustache that played for Rangers, apart from the two lads just now. Davy Dodds had one, I'm sure. Off the top of your head, Chris, any guys standing out that had a moustache playing for Rangers?
Certainly not in more recent times. I can't even think of anybody in the last decade or so that's even had one just for a couple of weeks and then get rid of it. It's not something that we do see often. But if you're starting the campaign for it, that'd be great. But I think you do have to go back. Decades for a proper mustachioed Rangers player.
Yep, Timothy quite rightly says Dale Gordon. Yeah, Disco Dale had one, I'm sure. Feezy says Dougie Bell had one back in the 80s. Kenneth says Cammy Fraser had one as well. Yeah, so a few mentions for Dale Gordon. Yeah, absolutely. I did like Dale Gordon, incidentally. He was a good player. Right, that's other points from the games. We talked about Hamza, Chris. The manager was speaking about him and Nadim Barami afterwards. He says, and Nadim is just in the building, so he had 2 short sessions with the team. Like I say, he doesn't even know all the names of his teammates, so he's just here. But we know what kind of player he is, what he can do for the team. He showed some things, but he can show much more still in the future. And Hamza, when we signed him, it's a big talent. We had to do it now because if it would have been 1 year later, we could never afford that kind of player. He's coming straight out of a Moroccan competition, Moroccan culture. Everything is new for him. He was also injured when he came, so it took him time to get more fit. And that's what we're going to do in the next weeks and next months to give him opportunities to grow as a young player. But you see already a lot of good basic qualities. Yeah, I've seen a little montage that the Moroccan lads that we had on the channel created from his performance yesterday. Some nice touches there, Chris. He's got a good first touch on it. He can control the ball. The ball sticks when it's played up to him. There's a lot to like about this boy.
Before we touch on the man with the moustache, we have to go over another man with a moustache. That's a good shout.
Good point. Yep.
I think Tam had a similar shout. So fair play to them for remembering Boydie's effort. We can now talk about far more important matters. I thought Igaman looked bright. He looked different. He looked quite exciting. Clearly, a lot more to come, hopefully. But I think he showed some nice touches. He looked a type of player that the fans could easily get behind. He looked the type of player that the fans are going to be excited by. Clearly, have to be patient with him, as the manager outlined there, and as we've said over the last couple of months. It is a big culture change for him. It is a big football change for him. Rangers will be patient with him, but I think we're now hopefully at the stage where he can be introduced a bit more regularly. I think you mentioned at the top of the show there, potentially starting him against Dundee. That for me is not a bad suggestion at all. Dundee at Ibrox should be the type of game where even if he only gets a half, even if he only gets an hour, if he's at that fitness level, I think it would definitely give people a proper look at him rather than just these cameos also coming on at Parkhead. Very, very difficult circumstances in which to make your Rangers debut. Slightly better circumstances yesterday, but not ideal for him, not ideal for Bayrami either. Both of them, I think, deserve to get the start against Dundee, show the Ibrox crowd what they can do, and I say just start to give people a bit more to buy into and a bit more reason to be optimistic going forward.
Yep, Barami, of course, came on at half-time for Cortez. I think that was always the plan to just play 45 minutes for him after coming back from injury. Dado Purcell's blue boot says that the Albanian number 10 is not a winger. Clement playing the lad out of position. I'm sure he'll be playing as a number 10. I would like to see him playing as that 10 against Dundee. I think next week we'll give him time to learn his teammates' names. Just stick stickers on their front as you do it in a new job, and then I'm sure he will understand his teammates' names by the time Dundee comes around. But pretty quiet a game for Barami, but showed some nice touches. I'm excited about seeing more from him. I touched on Dowell. I think that was a big surprise, Chris. He hasn't played. He started the St Johnstone game, the cup game, I'm sure. Prior to that was it Ross County last season, if I'm not mistaken, or thereabouts. Ewan with a point. What's your thoughts on Dill starting Chris and Derek? Why not play Dujon or one of the academy guys? Even Hadji is a better shout. Didn't do anything of note, Kieran Dill, Chris. Of course, Václav Černý was ill, which was the reason why he never started yesterday, but it shows Rangers are light in that area that Kieran Dill's coming in.
I think Dill never really seems to stamp his authority on games. He goes through matches and you almost forget that he's there sometimes. He doesn't ever seem to grab a game by the scruff of the neck and go and really dominate it or change it. It's just almost 6 out of 10 stuff, and then you forget that you sometimes forget that he's even played. I think circumstances, obviously, the manager outlined pre-match on RTV that Černý has got an illness. That clearly had to change the selection. I would have thought that McCausland, I know he picked up a knock on international duty. Sterling, the manager also decided not to put him in. It didn't cost Rangers on the day. Can you say that Kieran Dill has laid down a marker or a signal of intent and said, I must start against Dundee and I deserve to start going forward? No. Ultimately, he's not the long-term option in that area of the pitch. There must have been reasons why McCausland didn't start. I'm assuming fitness must be a reason why Sterling didn't start. I think we both agreed towards the end of the window that another wide area player would have been beneficial to Rangers. That's also been exacerbated given that Rabbi Matondo has now been injured. So Rangers, I think they're light of numbers. They are short of options in those areas. For me, Dill is he's not the option in there. He's not the solution. But in certain matches, if he can almost fill in and do a job, then I say Rangers got away with it. But it's not it was a surprising call. I think out of all the names that when that team got announced yesterday, Dill's one was the name that he stood out and that got the Twitter lighting up and got the WhatsApps being sent. I say it's not a long-term thing. It's not the manager trying something thinking I can see Kieran Dill really going to establish himself in that area. Very much a squad player, very much a guy who's going to fill gaps as and when required.
Yeah, absolutely. The manager in his press conference, you can watch that in full over on the YouTube channel, folks. He was quizzed on, he was asked about his thoughts, and of course, John Bennett standing down and says, yeah, that's not something that you want, of course. So I heard from John, as probably one of the first to hear about that during the week. He explained everything to me. It's not his decision, it's a doctor's decision. So it's with a lot of pain in the heart that you had to make the decision. I wish him all the best to recover as fast as possible, but he will not be away. He'll be there at a distance, but he needs to keep a little bit of distance now to recover first. And he was asked, does that put more pressure on you as one of the leaders at the club? I think until now, I've been the only one talking outside, so that doesn't change too much. Maybe it will change next week. We'll see. I'm not the guy who brings in the cash or the money into the club. My job is to get the best out of the players who are in the building and to look for new ones together with the recruitment team and to make the right decisions with the budget we have. That's my job to do, and I will continue in that way. But I also have had a lot of talks before with James and with John about strategic things for the future of the club and to make things better in the club in everything, but also in Scottish football. So I think it will continue with the new people who step in. So that is what the manager had to say when he conducted his press conference at Tannadice yesterday before heading back down the road. Robin Proper also speaking to the press as well, folks. You can find out what he had to say. That video is scheduled to go out a little bit later on today, so you can have a watch of that also. Right, I think that'll do us there. A big thanks to Chris as ever. Just a heads up what is coming your way over on the Rangers Review Extra channel. I think we'll record a Q&A show this afternoon, so around about 2 p.m, folks. I'll send out the link in the community page, so get your questions in and we'll get through as many as we possibly can. I'm sure there'll be a fair few both with regards to both on and off the field issues. So look forward to getting stuck into those. As I touched on earlier, go and read what Dave King had to say over on the website. We'll wrap up there. We will be back tomorrow, but if we don't speak to you before then, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Bye for now.